I left my wife at the hospital with huge bills to pay because she cheated on me and contracted an illness. I'm a 42-year-old man living in Austin, Texas. I'd been married to Amelia, a 43-year-old woman, for 6 years. We weren't exactly an Instagram-worthy romance, but we were supposed to have a relationship built on loyalty and mutual respect. However, what I believed clearly didn't match what Amelia believed. I thought I was married to a mature woman, not someone acting like a teenager, someone who wasn't needy or desperate for attention. But as you'll see in the rest of my post, I was completely wrong about her. Everything fell apart when Amelia got seriously sick. At first, it looked like a severe case of food poisoning. She was vomiting nonstop and couldn't keep anything down. She was pale, weak, and dehydrated. She refused to go to the hospital since she'd always been terrified of needles and IVs. I tried taking care of her at home, but as her condition kept getting worse and I'm no doctor, there was no other way. She needed professional help, so despite her phobia, I took her to the medical center so they could diagnose and start treatment. When we got there, they rushed her into the ER because her condition was worse than we imagined. I held her hand and tried to calm her, but something wasn't right. I guess the body knows when disaster is coming, but for me, I had no idea of the horrors waiting in the next 48 hours. Amelia's condition stabilized after a few hours thanks to the doctors, but she still looked weak and pale. The hospital staff wanted to run tests because although they'd managed to treat her symptoms, they still didn't know what was causing them. The results would be ready in 2 days and they'd decide on the treatment or discharge based on that. I stayed by her side the entire time and didn't leave her for a minute. After 12 hours, they reduced her medication and she became dehydrated again. That raised red flags with the medical team. On the 3rd day, a nurse handed me an envelope with the results of her blood tests, saying that the doctor would explain everything soon. Amelia was asleep, connected to an IV, looking fragile. I told her I had the results, but she said she was too weak to deal with it and asked me to open it and read it for her. By the time I finished opening the envelope and pulling out the pages, she had completely fallen asleep. It was understandable. She was exhausted from all the medication and symptoms. But the thing that was just starting to hit me was what she actually had. She'd tested positive for chlamydia. For a few minutes, I went through every stage of grief, denial, sadness, anger. I frantically Googled the diagnosis, and the answers weren't what I wanted to see. I don't know how long I sat there before the doctor called me into his office. I pointed at the result and stammered, "This can't be true. There must be some mistake." He said, "I'm sorry, but the tests are conclusive. We'll start the treatment immediately. It's crucial that you complete the course of antibiotics." I felt like my head was about to explode. My wife had a sexually transmitted disease. The implications were obvious. We all know how she probably got it, but I was in complete denial. When Amelia woke up, I silently handed her the report. Her face lost whatever little color it had as she read it. She was crying, insisting that she could explain everything. All she needed was to be heard. She wanted to know what kind of explanation she had for contracting a sexually transmitted disease, because I certainly hadn't given her any. We hadn't been intimate in months because she always complained of having a headache. How could she have a headache when she was busy having fun somewhere else? I didn't care that she was sick or that we were at the hospital. I was angry and needed answers. Just hours before, I'd been praying for her recovery. Now, seeing her only made me sicker than she was. She could cry all she wanted. She could even die from dehydration by crying while apologizing, but I wasn't moved at all. I pressed her for the truth. It was the least she could do after everything. We were in a hospital, but I was losing my patience and wanted to scream at her. Finally, after an endless interrogation, she confessed that she'd been sleeping with random men whenever she had the chance. Most of them were guys from a bar she frequented whenever possible. In other words, whenever I wasn't around to ruin her fun night. I pressed her for details. How many, where she met them, how often, and most importantly, why it wasn't enough for her. For most of my questions, her first response was tears, but eventually, and after a lot of prodding, I got my answers. Apparently, she started talking to guys at the bar who would buy her a drink and make her feel beautiful. She mentioned that she didn't go home with all of them to have sex, which she probably said so she wouldn't come off as a slut. But it was a poor excuse on her part because regardless of the number of men or how many she rejected, she was still unfaithful and had contracted an STD as a result. She did make it clear that they were just casual flings, nothing more, and that the guys were okay with that. As if they ever would be. I mean, she practically gave them sex without any commitment. Could you be any dumber? I'm not sure. But I wonder if the chlamydia had made her even dumber because it seemed like she had lost a few neurons in the last few hours. Every word coming out of her mouth, which, in my opinion, was the nastiest place on the planet, was worse than the last. For example, she'd say things like, "It's something I do once in a while. It's my guilty pleasure. I know it's wrong, but I just couldn't stop." My next question was, "How long have you been doing this?" She admitted that it had been going on for a couple of years. Her justification? She only did it when she was drunk, and then she'd avoid intimacy with me for a week afterward, as if she had any respect for me. You could see from miles away the respect she supposedly had for me, just as you could clearly see she was a tramp. Sorry for using that word, but I don't want my post deleted, and I probably should have used another name for her. She had the nerve to say, "I know it may hurt you, but I've never loved any of them, I only love you." That's why she didn't want to have sex after sleeping with them. She wanted to protect you from that version of herself, in some twisted way. That was a really stupid move on my part, especially because now I'm paying the price. I guess it's punishment enough for me, because you can see that karma has finally caught up with me. All I know is that I love you and want to remain married. I hoped you'd forgive me so we could get out of there and resume our marriage where we left off. I exploded. I threw a chair as I got up because what I was hearing wasn't nonsense. It was the words of a complete and sick narcissist. And the worst part? The illness wasn't even her STD. I yelled, "You wanted to hurt me. You've been risking my health, my trust, our marriage for years. And you say you didn't mean to hurt me? What if you passed something on to me?" I lost control and called her every name in the book. But I hope you understand. I wasn't just betrayed. I could very well be in that hospital room right now if I hadn't had the luck of not sleeping with her. Her excuse was that she always used protection and felt safe. When she tried to take my hand, I pulled away, shouting, "You're disgusting. And even if you can't infect me by touch, your hands are dirtier than a garbage dump." I stormed out of the room while she stayed there crying. When I spoke with the doctor, he told me that I needed to get tested. We hadn't been intimate in a while, but who knew how long she might have been infected? There was a chance I could be infected too, maybe asymptomatic. I gave my blood sample and left, while they kept Amelia at the hospital to treat her chlamydia. I didn't want to drive home because I didn't want to sleep there. She'd been living there, and I felt so filthy that not even burning it to the ground would make me feel any better. I could just imagine lying on the sofa or wherever and germs crawling over me. I was completely turned off, and everything made me feel absolutely nauseous. As I drove, I kept thinking about everything she'd told me, feeding my hatred and disgust. At the same time, my phone wouldn't stop vibrating with her messages, but I was driving and couldn't or wouldn't check them. At least that drive gave me a plan. She wasn't coming back into my life. I could just pack up her stuff, her clothes, her makeup, her ridiculous music collection, her car in the garage of our apartment complex. Still, I ended up spending a couple of nights in a hotel because I refused to go back. I'm not exaggerating when I say I felt a tremendous disgust for both my wife and our home. That's why I hired a specialized biohazard cleaning crew to sanitize the entire apartment. Call me crazy, but I still felt like she had contaminated everything. I wanted every trace of her gone. Next, I found a Texas family lawyer and set up a Zoom meeting. I wasn't going to waste another day with this woman. I never went back to the hospital. In fact, I even got a call from the hospital demanding payment for Amelia's treatment. I didn't care. She left furious voicemail messages because she needed the treatment to get better and I was refusing to pay. She even mentioned our vows, saying we promised to be there for each other in sickness and in health. Yeah, those vows, where she was supposed to play her part in keeping the marriage together. Her talking about vows, but what about the vows of fidelity? Why didn't she think about that before sleeping with half of Austin and the neighboring cities? Good luck convincing the hospital administration to treat her if she doesn't pay. The day she was discharged, my phone exploded with calls from the hospital. I ignored every single one. I knew it was all about the bills, which had already exceeded what the insurance covered. They even sent me copies by email. I knew she didn't have enough on her credit cards to cover it, but why should I care? She created this mess. She called a friend to pick her up, and that friend dropped her off at the apartment. I didn't open the door. Her keys were inside. I hadn't bothered to take them when I took her to the hospital. I shouted from the door that she wasn't welcome, and her belongings were in the garage. I loaded the trunk of her car with her valuable items and left the rest in the garage. I knew she'd come back, if not to try to convince me, then at least to pick up her stuff, so I made it easy for her. I didn't pack them carefully, so if anything was broken among her things, well, sorry, not sorry. She pleaded for me to let her in. After a while, I saw her friend leave, leaving Amelia alone. She kept crying, having nowhere to go. She begged for a chance to talk, to fix things. She even pleaded for compassion until she got better. Then I could do whatever I wanted. Compassion? Seriously? You've been sleeping with other men, contracting diseases, and now you expect me to be sensitive? Get out of here, you container of biological weapons. The house was finally clean, and I wasn't about to risk her bringing in another infection. She had the nerve to say, I know I made a mistake and hurt you, but maybe we can fix things when I recover. I shouted back, it wasn't a mistake to be a, well, you know the word. I can't even look at you anymore. Get out of my property before I call the people who handle radioactive waste. She cried a little more, but then she left. There were still some things in the garage, but I don't know if she didn't take them because they didn't matter, there wasn't enough space, or she just didn't notice. Either way, I didn't care. I threw them in the trash the next morning. Meanwhile, my own test results came back negative, thank God. For a moment, I felt something good, after all the chaos. But the fact that she had put me in that situation was still unforgivable. The doctor reminded me to get tested again in a month, just in case. I also have an appointment with the lawyer to officially begin the divorce proceedings. At this point, I have no idea where Amelia is or how she's dealing with all of this. She keeps sending me messages, apologizing, begging to at least stay in the apartment until she recovers. Lately, her messages have shifted from pleading to threats. She was furious about being abandoned and threatened to tell everyone just how horrible a husband I am. Well, let her. I'll sit back and enjoy the show. Before continuing, don't forget to subscribe. New stories every day. Update 1. I got tested again, and thank God the results came back negative. Throughout all this time, Amelia didn't give up. She called her parents, claiming that I had abandoned her at the hospital and kicked her out for no reason. They showed up at my apartment demanding answers. Someone had to tell the whole story, and they were ready to do so. I asked, did she tell you everything? Don't you think you should have asked for details before accusing me? Well, since you're here, let me explain. Your daughter cheated on me. She slept with several men, contracted a sexually transmitted disease, and put my health at risk. If that isn't enough reason to leave her at the hospital and kick her out, then we have nothing to talk about. But the look on their faces immediately told me they agreed with me. Her mother instantly called Amelia, demanding to know if it was true. I don't know what she said, but her mother started yelling, calling her all sorts of names. Her father's face turned bright red. He snatched the phone from his wife and yelled, "Don't you have any shame? You lied to us. Stay where you are. "We're done with you." He stormed out, and his wife followed, still screaming over the phone, which she had already reclaimed. When the divorce papers were ready, my lawyer contacted Amelia to get her address. She gave her parents' address. As soon as she received the papers, her mother called me to tell me that she had made sure Amelia got them. She said that after I kicked her out, Amelia had been living in a motel near the highway for a week, but her condition worsened, so her parents took her in. Amelia was also fired from her job. One of her friends, who apparently wasn't very fond of her, found out about the chlamydia, and the news spread faster than it took her to hook up with a man. They didn't fire her because of the disease, but because she'd been missing work for too long. Of course, Amelia blamed me, but I didn't care. Her mother even told me not to have any compassion for her, even if she was recovering. She said that Amelia was in no condition to handle a divorce, even though her mental health had seen better days. She urged me not to delay, because Amelia needed to face the consequences. Amelia had exhausted her savings and lost her job, so these were serious consequences, and her mother knew it. But she didn't care. She was on the side of good people. She even suggested that she could act as an intermediary so I wouldn't have to deal with Amelia directly if I wanted to block her once and for all. I wish Amelia could be more like my mother-in-law, since I can see that her husband married a real woman instead of some bar toy. Even though I blocked her on my phone, Amelia sent me a long email apologizing. If I can say anything about that email, it was the first genuine apology I'd ever seen from her. Among other things, she said she felt like a ghost of her former self, broke, out of work, her reputation ruined, socially isolated. Even her siblings wouldn't talk to her. Her father, a proud man, was humiliated. He resented her presence, and even her mother no longer supported her. So there was no one there to help cover her expenses right now. At least, no one who wanted to. Yes, her mother was right. Amelia's mental state had taken a beating lately because she seemed to think I'd forgive her or help her in some way at this very moment. I'm glad she's depressed, because that pulls me out of my own depression. It's the very least she could do with everything she's done to me, and I don't feel guilty thinking that right now. Update 2. I decided to get tested for chlamydia a third time, just to be extra cautious. And a third confirmation that I'm free of it really lifts the spirit. As for Amelia's spirit, well, if she dies tomorrow, she's probably headed for the worst part of hell. Her soul isn't at peace either, because karma hadn't even started with her when we went to the hospital. She's been on antibiotics as is standard, but for some reason, they don't seem to be working for her. My mother-in-law and father-in-law have been the ones feeding me information about her medical condition, to some extent. Now, the doctors have put her on another round of stronger antibiotics to see if that does the trick. I'm not praying for her, nor do I care if she gets cured or not. I'm not going to feel sorry for a woman like her, no matter how bad things are for her right now. The only thing that worries me is that she might die before the divorce is finalized. I don't want to end up as Amelia's widower. I want the divorce to go through first and for her fate to be dealt with afterward. I know many will think I'm being horrible here because what she did doesn't compare to death. But didn't she have it coming? She was playing with fire by sleeping with strangers. If anyone were to end up on another round of antibiotics, it could have been me. Even though my results are negative now, the likelihood of something happening because of what she did was high enough for me to know that her actions were putting my life at risk. I don't think she deserves any compassion. Her parents, right now, don't even want her around the house. They've had enough of her, and they told her to leave. She isn't out on the street, though. She's in a treatment center where she's receiving care. It's run by an organization that helps people, my soon-to-be ex-wife included, who are suffering from this and other sexually transmitted diseases here in Austin. If they only knew what she's done, they'd be using that bed for someone who really needed it. The change in her parents, who until now had at least accepted her staying with them, came after new confessions. Some of the men she slept with were not as random as she claimed. There were friends, not very close ones, of my father-in-law on the list, and even some married men that my in-laws knew. My father-in-law even had to call the wives or partners of these men, with all that entails, to inform them of what was happening and to tell them to get tested. Now you understand why her parents were so furious that they kicked their own sick daughter out. They couldn't have someone like that in their house. It was a disgrace to the family and a complete dishonor. My ex still has medical bills to her name, but until she gets better and finds a job, those bills will have to wait to be collected, if that ever happens. The divorce process is still ongoing, though I've asked my lawyer to speed things up so it wraps up as soon as possible. I've even offered to pay extra if that's what it takes, but he says the process has its own pace that cannot be rushed. He'll do whatever he can to expedite things, like filing paperwork earlier. Now we're in a race against time to end this marriage, a marriage that should never have existed. Update 3. Over time, I've started to forgive Amelia. Not in the, I forgive you, kind of way. I mean, let's give it another shot. I don't care if you have venereal diseases. I love you so much that I'm not bothered if you infect me. It's more like, I'm tired of hating you because you don't even deserve that. The therapy I started a few months ago has begun to bear fruit. Good fruit? I'm not sure. At least I don't think about her anymore. It's weird to share this now since times aren't great, but I've been feeling this way for months. I just didn't want to do a mini update where all I said was the above. Because now I have something to share that might make you think I forgave her not because of therapy, but because of what happened. And it's fine if you don't believe me, I get how it looks. Amelia passed away about 2 weeks ago after battling the disease. It didn't keep me up at night, it didn't make me feel any better, and I didn't celebrate it. Maybe my old self would have, but this new me just kept going with life. She fought hard, but the strain she contracted was too severe. Whatever the medical term might be, her body eventually couldn't take it anymore once they couldn't cure her. Many people have been alerted about her disease, as I mentioned in my previous update, and they've gotten tested. I don't have a list here, but there have been negative results, like mine, as well as some positives. Maybe one of them was the one who infected Amelia, or perhaps she was the one who infected them. We'll never know. On another note, the divorce was finalized about a month and a few weeks ago, so I'm not a widower at the moment. I'm just divorced. For those who say one alternative isn't better than the other, for me it certainly is. I don't feel like explaining to anyone whether I'm the widower of a woman who did what she did, or the man who divorced her. It's semantics, but I prefer it that way. Recently, we even filed a lawsuit against Amelia for putting my life at risk. But that would have taken too much time we no longer have. The lawsuit has been dropped because there's no one left to sue. The same goes for the hospital, which still has bills in her name. I'm glad I didn't pay them before finding out what she had. I'd feel like an idiot otherwise. That's all I have to tell you. And yes, I haven't had a 4th test done. I think 3 is enough to feel at ease.